Good morning, students, and we're gonna continue with Spacy. And in this tutorial, we're gonna talk about entity ruler, which is a very powerful component of Spacy, actually, in which to detect entities, right? And it's actually one of the tasks of NLP called name entity recognition. So the Spacy can help a lot with that, either through rule base or even using a neural network, right? So let us try to take a look at this. So before anything else, let us import the Spacy. And similarly, what we're gonna do is we're gonna load some trained models by Spacy. All right, and here I'm using a small for English. And the first thing we want to do is we can actually take a look at the existing pipeline that that actually Spacy have. And by doing an NLP.analyze pipes, you can see the pipeline, right? So you can see that there's such thing as a token too big, right? Which allow us to have this thing called doc.tensor, and then there's this pipeline called tagger, which assigned token.tag, and then there's a parser, which actually assigned token.dependency.head, right? This is something that we have discussed earlier, right? And you may wonder, like, where does it come from? So this is actually the pipeline that is trained by on this module, right? And then the lemmatizer, right, which actually learned token.lemma. And finally, there's this component called ner, right, which actually learned the dot ends, dot entity type, and also the dot IOB, right, underscore IOB, right? So you can see that by loading this module, you come with a pipeline in which you're allowed to extract this kind of information, right? So the question is, what if you, of course, using this is easy, right? You just extract using them right away. The question is, can you actually add more pipeline, extract your own entity types, etc.? And the question is yes. The answer is yes. All right. So let us first comment this first and then add a couple of lines. So the way we can do this is like this, right? So we can say ruler equal to NLP dot add pipe entity ruler, and we're gonna put it before ner, right? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a patterns equal to label location, yep. And the pattern that we want to apply this pattern is basically simply a hard-coded text called rangsit, right? You can put anything like Nepal, right? Anything is fine, but rangsit is the place where my university is located at. And then finally, what we can do is a ruler dot add patterns. Patterns. All right. So once you do that, I guess we can actually take a look again, right, and see whether that is actually added. And I'm gonna just add one line of code, so you can see that we got a new Okay, so let us scroll, and yep. So this is the new entity ruler that we just added in, right? Previously, lematizer is ner is follow right after lematizer, right? And now I added a new entity ruler, which assigned Dr. ends, etc., right? So this precede the ner, right? So you can see that this actually worked. All right. So now, to test this out, why not we try something, right? So we can say text equal to AIT is at roundset, right? And now we're gonna apply NLP text to here, and then add a couple more lines, and then I'm gonna say for doc and sorry, for entity in doc.ends print and the text of the entity and also the label, right? So you can see that AIT is considered organization and Rangsit is considered as a location, right? So entity ruler, a very simple way to actually add your own rules. But of course, this is very like hard coded, right? So the question is, do we have any more patterns? And the answer is yes, right? So there's so many ways that Spacy support you to build your own name entity recognition, right? But of course, it also support neural network training, right? But anyway, in this tutorial, we're gonna talk about all the classic ways to recognize entity, right? So let us explore more patterns, right? So firstly, we're gonna say import Spacy, and let's say I have this kind of pattern: text equal to my phone number is okay, let's say my phone number has this kind of format and I want to recognize that this is actually a phone number, right? So what I can do is I can start with this time I will start with a blank, and because I don't want to have any existing pipeline, right? So I start with a blank, and I'm not sure that by starting a blank I can have an analysis, right? So I can just gonna go up here and copy this one, right? And I'll also pipe. Let me just see whether there's any pipe, right? So you can see that once we run this, you can't see anything, right? Because we start with a blank, right? So that is something that we can take note of, right? Then what we can do now is add some patterns. And at this time, I'm not going to use actually the hard coded text, but I use a more complicated uh, uh, patterns, right? So the labels, labels. So I'm gonna say that okay, this is a phone number, right? And the pattern is sorry, patterns. All right. Um. So firstly, we're gonna start with the pattern, right? And the pattern is start with we want to make sure that it start with this, all right? And the patterns is actually a list of dictionary, all right? So okay, so now I have a double column here, and the dictionary is start with a pair of something like this, in which firstly, what I can do is I'm gonna do something called orthography, and orthography is simply saying that please find this exact match of this, right? So here, whenever I found this, that is the starting of my patterns, and then okay, and I already mentioned this is a dictionary, right? So make sure that that is a dictionary, and okay, so that is my first pattern that I want to recognize. And then the second one is shape. And here so shape is something that Spacy support, and it's basically support a lot of shapes, right? You can always look at the documentations, but DDD just stand for digits, right? So 555, right? And then we're gonna continue to recognize this, and that once we have 555, we want to recognize this, right? So we're gonna have this one too. And now this is a closing bracket, and the next one is also a tree number, right? So what I'm gonna do is this one too. Right, and the next one is I want to recognize this dash, so I'm going to use or2. All right, and here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say dash, and what I got to add something new here, and I'm going to say that OP equal to question mark, right? So question mark means that 0 or 1. So you can say that, well, if things are not like just like this, then it will still be recognized, right? And then finally, we're gonna say shape, and we're gonna specify D. All right. So hopefully that is fine, and I do not do any typo mistake. And that we're gonna say a ruler that add patterns, patterns. All right, and I already have some errors here. So pattern, yep. Okay, and I also have label. Label should be has no S. Yep, great. So this is done. Now that we are done, of course, you can turn on the analyze pipes, and you can see that this is on, but I'm not going to do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply NLP text. And finally, we can take a look at the entity, right? For entity in the doc.ends, print end.text and end.label. Right. And the text is there, right? So yeah, it should print something, right? So ruler that add okay, I haven't add the ruler yet, right? So here something I'm missing is a ruler equal to NLP.add pipe. So I haven't even actually add this ruler to here. So this ruler is actually referring to the ruler up there, right? So now I'm adding this pipe here, and I call that ruler. All right. So now it should come, right? So I'm gonna clear all the outputs to make sure that things gonna work fine. So run all. All right, great. So once I run everything, now we can see that this is the only entity that is recognized in here, and it captured this phone number, right? So yep. So the Spacy just support this kind of operations out of the box. Yep. Great. Of course, we also can learn something called matcher, which is even easier and more versatile, right? So which is something Spacy provides. So we're gonna do from Spacy dot matcher import matcher. And I'm gonna say NLP equal to Spacy dot load. So now this time we're gonna use the module that is trained by the pipeline that is trained by Spacy already, called small. And I'm gonna say matcher equal to so I'm gonna create a matcher, and the constructor or the init requires the NLP dot vocabs, right? So this NLP is actually referring to the pipeline that Spacy trained, right? And you may wonder, like, okay, so what does this matcher do? Well, we can do something like this. So we can do pattern equal to, and now you can do even more different type of patterns like this. So you can say like email and true, right? So previously, I don't think you can do this, right? So, but it just say that, hey, please match to this pattern, right? Call like email. So this is like look like email. And I'm gonna say matcher dot add, and I'm gonna call this email, and you can send in a list, right? And here I'm gonna just send in the first pattern, and so now I'm gonna say doc equal to NLP. My email is like that, and hopefully it can matches that. So matches equal to matcher doc, right? And of course, I have to print out this matches. Yep. So you can see that it gives some matches and say that probably the 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 entity type, right? And also the yeah. So why don't we print it out, right? So here we can say NLP dot vocab, right? And we're gonna say matches 0 dot text, right? That we will know that what is this, right? Oh, sorry, not text, right? So we know that this is actually matching email, right? So this is exactly the match, right? I don't remember what does this 3 and 4. I perhaps 3 is probably 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So this is the word, and 4 could be the entity type, right? Could be, yep. But anyway, you can always take a look and what all these 3 numbers mean. Yep. Okay. I looked it up just a few seconds ago, and now I'm very clear. So this is basically the type of entity, right? So if you look at this up, this is email, right? And this is simply the start token and the ending token, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is the starting token, and then 4 is basically exclusive, right? So this entire entire token is considered as email, right? Of course, the reason why there's a start and ending token is simply because a token can span, entity can span multiple words away, tokens away, right? So yep, okay, so that is sorted out, right? Let us try something in a bigger context. So we can say with open. And I'm not sure we have some data here. Okay, so we got some data here. So we can say with open data wiki. Okay, I'm not sure I'm packeting that right. And as the file, right? And then text equal to f.read, right? And then now we can actually print the text, right? And it's saying no, it does not contain the. So maybe I need to delete the. Okay, great. Okay, great. So now I can have this file, which I have right here. So you guys can prepare any document you have, right? So, but this is some kind of Martin Luther King document that I just copy from the internet, right? So you can copy anything you want, right? This does not really matter, all right? And then once we have this text, what we're gonna do is we can NLP dot. So we're gonna load dot load and for what SM. And then what I'm gonna do is similarly we're gonna create the matcher, and the matcher is the init is the vocab. And then we're going to create patterns. So the first, the pattern we want to have is part of speech, right? So we're going to say part of speech is pronoun. Sorry, proper noun. And I'm going to say matcher dot add proper noun, and I'm gonna add this pattern. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say doc equal to NLP text, and matches equal to matcher doc. All right, and now I can print all these matches, right? So for match and matches, and I'm not gonna print all of them, so just 10. And so I'm gonna say print match first, right? So these are all the match, right? But to make this easier to read, let us add something, right? So we're gonna say, okay, so because we already have the index, so what we can do is doc match 1 and until match 2. Right, so now you have the exact word, right? So you can see that these are all matches by this something called pattern called proper noun, right? So these are all proper noun, right? Martin Luther King Jr., Michael King Jr., January, April, Baptist, right? I'm not sure about Baptist, but well, we're gonna let it slide for now, right? And but you can see that actually this one is one whole term, right? So what we can do with Spacy, we can do a lot of things here. So let us try it here. So you right here, what we're gonna say is that we're gonna add some operations called more than one or many, right? Something like that. So we're gonna say matcher equal to matcher NLP dot vocab, and pattern. Okay, I'm just gonna copy up here. Pattern, but here I'm gonna say OP, right? Which stand for the operators. We're gonna be plus. So plus means one or more. All right. Now question mark is zero or one, but plus means one or more. All right. So once we have that, I think we should be able to have a better look of the matches. So let me just copy this one. And once, okay, I need to make sure that I have this, right? And definitely to make sure I can rerun this one. Great. So you can see that now I have Martin Luther King, right? So it's and I because I only print 10, we only see this, right? Of course we can have more, right? Like 20, and we can see we start to be able to see January, April too. Well, but this is not exactly what we want, right? Because we just want one entity, right? One unique entity we don't want it to repeat, right? So the question is, can we do that? And I think we can, right? So let us try to do that. So we gonna copy. So we're just gonna go back up here, and we're gonna fix something here. So we're gonna say in here, it's say add matcher the add, right? And we're gonna add in one more argument called greedy equal to longest. All right. And yep, I think that's the magic. And we're gonna enter this, and I'm gonna uncomment this one and put it back 10. And you can see now that things looks much better here. So the Martin Luther King's but you can notice that this does not really overlap with this, right? This is a totally different entity that appears in different location of the document, right? So you can see Mahatma Tamakanti, right? So so you can see Spacy has this kind of a very powerful matcher that you can use it right away. Yep. Of course, we can do some sorting, right? To sort this because this does not really sort according to the location of the document, right? So what we can do is we can add some sorting. So we can do we can do something like this. So matches. Well, no, we're gonna do here matches dot sort key equal to so we want to sort based on this, right? The start token. So we're gonna say key equal to function x and pick the first one, right? And I guess that's it, right? So we're gonna clear all the outputs and restart and run all from the. Actually, I can just run this one, but I just want to make sure things okay. Great. So now that once we do add this dot sort, things now exactly the entity is listed exactly based on the order of the location they appear in the document, right? Great. So that is the matcher, and hopefully you like it. Before we end this tutorial, I want to just briefly explore the regular expression, right? Because you can see that actually everything is built on top of regular expression, but Spacy just make that easier for us, right? But of course, what if you want to go just hardcore and develop your regular expression? Is that possible? And the answer is yes, right? So we're gonna just briefly explore this. So we're gonna say import Spacy. Text equal to this is sample number 5555. How many five should I do this? 7. Okay. And NLP equal to Spacy dot blank in English. And then I'm gonna say I'm gonna add a ruler, NLP dot add pipe entity ruler. And patterns. So here is where we're gonna use regular expression. Yep. So again, we input dictionary, and we're gonna say this label is phone number. And the pattern is simply using a regular expression. So it starts with a list. We're going to start with the text. And here, what we're going to do is we call this regular expression. A little bit, there's a high chance of having mistake of this bracket, so be careful. And then we're going to say so you're going to have digits, right? So this stands for digits. And then how many of them? We want probably 7 of them, right? And that's it. Yep. So yep, regular expression is another area, completely another area that you may want to study yourself if you haven't, right? And then I think that's it for, so we're gonna say ruler.add patterns, patterns, and finally we can now say doc equal to NLP text, and for n and doc dot ends print n dot text n dot label, right? So yep, so based on this pattern that we have specified regular expression, you can also recognize phone number, right? So regular expression is used as a last resort when the Spacy does not provide you with those kind of pre-built pattern, right? So you can always go hardcore and use a regular expression. Yep. So yep, I think that's it for the entity rules. Thank you very much.